Princess Zara had a big problem. At 200 years old, which was still young for her kind, she was supposed to pick someone to marry. But here's the thing, she had already said no to more suitors than most people meet in their entire lives. Every morning, her father would storm into her crystal bedroom with another scroll of marriage proposals. "Zara, you can't keep doing this," he would say, his voice echoing through their floating palace. "The Prince of the Golden Moons is perfect for you. He's handsome, rich, and rules 3 entire solar systems." But Zara would just shake her head, her silver hair catching the light from distant stars. "Father, he's boring. All he talks about is his collection of rare planets. Do you know he actually tried to impress me by showing me a moon he painted purple?" Her father, Emperor Vox, didn't understand. In his day, marriages were simple. You found someone from a good family, someone with power and money, and you got married. Love was something that happened later, if you were lucky. But Zara was different. She had been born with a special gift that even her own people didn't fully understand. When she looked at someone, she could see their true self, not just what they looked like on the outside, but what they were really like deep down inside. And what she saw in all these fancy princes and lords made her stomach turn. They didn't want to marry her because they loved her. They wanted to marry her because she was a princess. Because marrying her would make them more important, more powerful, more famous. Take Prince Valor from the Ice Kingdoms, for example. He had arrived last month with 1,000 soldiers, and gifts worth more than some planets. He was tall, strong, and spoke in a deep, impressive voice about honor and duty. But when Zara looked at him with her special sight, she saw the truth. He was thinking about how marrying her would finally make his father proud of him. He saw her as a prize to win, not a person to love. Then there was Lord Cosmos from the Singing Stars. He was supposed to be a poet and an artist. He wrote her beautiful songs and painted pictures of her that made other people cry with joy. But Zara could see that he was just trying to use her fame to become the most famous artist in the galaxy. He didn't care about her feelings or thoughts. He only cared about his reputation. The worst one was probably Duke Neutron from the Metal Worlds. He was incredibly smart and could solve mathematical problems that would take computers years to figure out. He talked to her about science and philosophy, and everyone thought they were perfect for each other. But Zara saw the ugly truth. He thought she was stupid. He believed that because she was beautiful and royal, she couldn't possibly be intelligent. He wanted to marry her so he could feel superior and show off his brilliant wife like a trophy. Each rejection made her father angrier and the other royal families more insulted. The Galactic Council, which was like a big government that ruled over hundreds of worlds, started whispering that Princess Zara was impossible to please. Some said she thought she was better than everyone else. Others wondered if there was something wrong with her mind. But Zara wasn't crazy or stuck up. She was just lonely, really lonely. Living in a palace floating in space sounds amazing. But it can be the loneliest place in the universe when everyone around you wants something from you. The servants were too scared to be real friends. The nobles only talked to her because they had to. Even her own cousins acted differently around her because she was going to be the next ruler. Late at night, Zara would float to her bedroom window and look out at the millions of stars surrounding their palace. Somewhere out there, she thought, there had to be someone who would see her as just Zara, not Princess Zara, not the future ruler of 17 galaxies, not a way to become more powerful, just her. Her special gift, which everyone thought was so wonderful, had become like a curse. She could see through every fake smile, every practiced compliment, every carefully planned romantic gesture. Nothing was real, nothing was honest. Everything was just another performance in the endless play of royal politics. The breaking point came during the Festival of Three Moons, the biggest celebration of the year. Princes and lords from across the galaxy had come to dance with her and try to win her favor. Zara sat on her throne, watching dozens of the most eligible bachelors in the universe compete for her attention. Like birds showing off their feathers, Emperor Vox leaned over to whisper in her ear, "Look at them, Zara. Any one of these fine young Men would make you happy. Just pick one, please. But as Zara looked out at the crowd of suitors, all she could see were their real thoughts. This one wanted her money. That one wanted her army. Another one just wanted to prove he was better than his brother. Not a single one of them was thinking about making her happy or building a real life together. That night, after sending away yet another disappointed prince, Zara made a decision that would shock the entire galaxy. She told her father that she would rather give up her right to the throne than marry someone who didn't truly care about her. Emperor Vox was furious. You have responsibilities, Zara. You can't just think about yourself. What about our people? What about our family's honor? What about the future of our empire? But Zara had made up her mind. If I have to choose between being a good ruler and being true to myself, then maybe I'm not meant to be a ruler at all. The emperor gave her one last chance. There would be one final grand ceremony where suitors from every corner of the known universe would come to compete for her hand. If she didn't choose someone from this group, he would pick her husband himself. As Zara prepared for what might be her last chance at finding real love, she had no idea that her life was about to change in a way that no one could have predicted. Somewhere far away, on a small blue planet that most of the galaxy had never heard of, someone was about to discover that they were not alone in the universe, and that discovery would bring together two beings who had both given up hope of ever finding someone who truly understood them. Dr. Eleanor Rodriguez had always been the kind of person who stayed up too late asking questions that most people never thought about, while other kids were playing video games. She was outside with a cheap telescope, wondering if anyone was looking back at Earth from those tiny points of light in the sky. Now, at 32 years old, she was one of the world's leading experts in finding alien life. Not the little green men kind that you see in movies, but real scientific proof that humans weren't alone in the universe. She worked at a research station in the middle of Chile's Atacama Desert, surrounded by nothing but sand, rocks, and the clearest night sky on Earth. Most nights, Eleanor would be alone in the control room, surrounded by computers and radio equipment that cost more than most people's houses. She would listen to signals from space, hoping to hear something that didn't sound like random noise. Her friends and family thought she was wasting her life chasing impossible dreams. But Eleanor knew better. The universe was too big for Earth to be the only planet with life. On the night that changed everything, Eleanor was working late again. Her coffee had gone cold hours ago, and her eyes were getting tired from staring at computer screens. She was adjusting a new piece of equipment called a quantum resonance detector, which was supposed to pick up energy patterns that regular radio telescopes couldn't detect. At first, she thought the machine was broken. The screen was showing energy readings that didn't make any sense, according to the data. Something was responding to their signals, and it was getting closer to Earth. Fast, Eleanor rubbed her eyes and checked the numbers again. Then she ran the same test 3 more times. Each time, the results were the same. Something intelligent was out there, and it had noticed Earth's radio signals. Her hands were shaking as she reached for the emergency phone to call her supervisor. But before she could dial, every piece of equipment in the room started going crazy. Lights were flashing, alarms were beeping, and the main computer screen was showing energy readings so high they should have been impossible. Eleanor ran outside and looked up at the desert sky. At first, everything looked normal. The same stars she had been studying her whole life were twinkling peacefully in the darkness. But then she saw it, a point of light. That was definitely not a star. It was moving, growing brighter, and heading straight for her research station. Her scientific training told her to document everything, so she grabbed her camera and started recording. But her human instincts were telling her to run as fast as she could. The light was getting bigger and bigger, and she could hear a humming sound that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The spacecraft, and it was definitely a spacecraft, landed about 50 meters from the research station. It was nothing like the flying saucers in movies. This ship looked like it was made of liquid silver that had been shaped into something beautiful and impossible. It didn't have any sharp edges or visible engines. But somehow Eleanor knew it was the most advanced thing that had ever touched Earth. For a few minutes, Nothing happened. Elena stood there in the desert sand, holding her camera and trying to remember how to breathe. Then a section of the ship simply melted away, creating a doorway filled with soft, blue light. 3 beings stepped out, and Elena's brain struggled to process what she was seeing. They looked almost human, but not quite. They were tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to glow with its own inner light. When they moved, it was like watching dancers who had never learned that gravity was supposed to slow them down. The strangest part was their voices. When they spoke, Elena could hear the sounds they were making, but somehow she also understood what they meant. It was like her brain was automatically translating their language into thoughts. She could understand. Dr. Eleanor Rodriguez, the first being, said, and hearing her own name in that musical voice made her legs go weak. We have traveled very far to meet the person who has been singing to the stars. Singing to the stars, Elena managed to say, surprised that her voice still worked. Your radio signals, the second being explained, for many years. We have been listening to the songs your people send into space. Music, voices, data streams, they are all songs to us. But your signals were different. They asked questions. They sought answers. They showed a mind that truly wanted to understand the universe. Eleanor realized they were talking about her research. All those years of sending signals into space and listening for replies. To her, it had been science. To them, it had been like hearing someone calling out in the darkness, hoping for a friend to call back. The third being stepped forward and said something that Eleanor would remember for the rest of her life. We would like to invite you to witness something that no human has ever seen. Our princess is about to choose her life partner, and we believe you would find the ceremony fascinating from a scientific perspective. Eleanor's logical mind was screaming that this was impossible, that she was probably having some kind of breakdown from too much coffee and not enough sleep. But her heart, the part of her that had spent every clear night for 20 years looking up at the stars and hoping, knew that this was real. You want me to come with you? To space, she asked. We will bring you safely home. The first being promised. Your planet will experience this as a few weeks of time, but you will see wonders that will advance your understanding of the universe by centuries. Eleanor looked back at her research station, filled with equipment that had suddenly become as primitive as stone tools. Then she looked up at the stars that had called to her since childhood. Every scientific instinct she had was telling her that this was the opportunity of a lifetime. Maybe the opportunity of any lifetime. Okay, she said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. Let's go meet your princess. As Eleanor walked toward the impossible silver ship, she had no idea that she was about to become the most important human in galactic history. She thought she was just a scientist getting the chance to study alien culture up close. She had no way of knowing that somewhere in the depths of space, a lonely princess with the power to see people's true hearts was about to look at her and see something that would change both of their lives forever. The journey through space was like nothing Eleanor could have imagined, even in her wildest dreams. Looking out the ship's window, she watched stars stretch into lines of light as they traveled faster than anything humans thought was possible. The 3 beings who had brought her from Earth explained that they were using something called folded space, which was like taking a piece of paper, folding it, and stepping from one edge to the other instead of walking across the whole thing. When they finally arrived at their destination, Eleanor's breath caught in her throat. The palace wasn't built on a planet like she expected. Instead, it was carved directly into a massive asteroid that sparkled like a diamond. Rings of pure energy circled around it, creating the most beautiful light show she had ever seen. It was like someone had taken the aurora borealis and wrapped it around a floating mountain. Made of crystal. Welcome to the ethereal palace, one of her guides said. Home of Princess Zara and the heart of our civilization. As this ship docked, Eleanor felt nervous butterflies dancing in her stomach. She was about to be the first human to attend an alien royal ceremony, and she had no idea what to expect. The beings had given her a special suit that would let her breathe their air, while still keeping her safe, but she felt incredibly out of place. The ceremony hall was so huge that Eleanor couldn't see the other end of it. The ceiling disappeared into darkness above them, and thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the space. Elena had never seen anything like the variety of life forms gathered in one place. Some looked almost human, others were made of what appeared to be living crystal, and a few seemed to be made of colorful gas that moved with intelligence and purpose. Elena was guided to a special section reserved for diplomatic observers, where she could watch the ceremony without being noticed. She pulled out a small recording device, thinking about how amazed her colleagues back on Earth would be when she showed them footage of this incredible gathering. Then Princess Zara entered the hall, and Elena understood why beings had traveled from across the galaxy just to try to win her hand. The princess moved like she was floating rather than walking, her silver skin catching the light from the energy rings outside and reflecting it back in patterns that seemed to dance. Her hair flowed behind her like liquid starlight, and when she looked out at the crowd, her eyes held the depth and mystery of space itself. Elena watched, fascinated, as suitor after suitor approached the princess. Each one was more impressive than the last. The crown prince of the Magellanic Clouds was tall and powerful, with a voice that could probably be heard across solar systems. He offered Princess Zara a star that he claimed to have created just for her. Elena's scientific mind was amazed. They could actually create stars? But Princess Zara just nodded politely and dismissed him with a graceful wave of her hand. Next came the Quantum Lord of the Dark Matter Kingdoms. Elena couldn't even fully see him because he seemed to exist, partially in another dimension. He presented the princess with a crown made from something he called crystallized time. Elena didn't understand how time could be turned into a physical object, but the crown was undeniably beautiful, shifting and changing colors in ways that hurt her eyes to look at directly. Princess Zara thanked him kindly, but sent him away to dot. Elena found herself getting caught up in the drama. Each suitor brought gifts that defied everything she knew about physics and science. One offered her a planet where it rained liquid music. Another brought her flowers that bloomed with tiny galaxies instead of petals. A warrior prince demonstrated his strength by lifting what appeared to be a small black hole with his bare hands. But no matter how impressive the gifts or how perfect the suitors seemed, Princess Zara remained unmoved. Elena began to feel sorry for her. It must be incredibly lonely to have all this attention, but never feel a real connection with anyone. As the ceremony went on, Elena noticed that Emperor Vox was getting more and more frustrated with his daughters' rejections. His expression grew darker with each dismissed suitor, and Elena could see that this was about more than just finding his daughter a husband. This was about politics, alliances, and the future of their entire civilization. Finally, the emperor stood up from his throne, and his voice boomed across the massive hall. "My daughter, you have seen the finest beings our galaxy has to offer. You must choose now, or I will choose for you. The future of our people depends on this alliance." Elena felt the tension in the room become almost unbearable. Thousands of beings held their breath, waiting to see what Princess Zara would decide. Elena gripped her recording device tighter, realizing she was about to witness a moment that would be remembered in galactic history. Princess Zara stood silently for what felt like forever. Elena could see the conflict on her face, the weight of responsibility fighting against her personal desires. Slowly, the princess's gaze began to sweep across the assembled crowd, looking at each of the rejected suitors one more time. Then something impossible happened. Princess Zara's eyes moved past all the princes and lords and cosmic royalty. They drifted to the diplomatic section, where observers from various worlds sat quietly watching the ceremony. And then, to Elena's absolute shock, those cosmic eyes locked directly onto her. Elena's heart stopped beating. She looked around, certain that the princess must be looking at someone behind her or next to her. But she was sitting alone in her row, and Princess Zara's gaze was unmistakably focused on her face. The princess raised her hand, and every being in the hall turned to see what she was pointing at. Her voice, clear and decisive, carried across the stunned silence. That one, Elena felt like the floor had disappeared beneath her feet. Thousands of alien beings were now staring directly at her, and she had absolutely no idea why. She wanted to disappear, to somehow become invisible. But Princess Zera was still pointing at her with a small smile on her lips. The hall erupted into chaos. Voices in dozens of languages filled the air as beings demanded to know who this unknown creature was and why their princess had chosen her. Over the most eligible bachelors in 17 galaxies, Elena sat frozen in her seat, unable to process what was happening to her. Through all the noise and confusion, Elena could only focus on one thing. Princess Zera was still looking at her, and for the first time since the ceremony began, the princess looked truly happy. The chaos that followed Princess Zera's choice was unlike anything Elena had ever experienced. The massive ceremony hall erupted into what could only be described as the galaxy's first intergalactic diplomatic crisis in real time. Angry voices in languages Elena couldn't understand filled the air, while translation devices worked overtime to convert the outrage into words she could comprehend. "This is an insult to every noble house in the 17 galaxies," shouted the crown prince of the Magellanic clouds, his perfect face twisted with rage. "How dare she choose a primitive being from an unknown world over the finest genetic specimens our civilizations have produced," added the quantum lord, his dimensional form flickering with anger. Elena sat frozen in her seat, feeling like a deer caught in headlights. She wanted to stand up and explain that there had been some terrible mistake, that she was just a scientist who had come to observe, not participate. But her legs wouldn't move, and her voice seemed to have completely disappeared. Emperor Vox's reaction was the most terrifying of all. His cosmic energy made the entire palace shake, and when he spoke, his voice carried the power of dying stars. "Zera, what is the meaning of this madness? You reject the most eligible beings in known existence to point it at. What is that creature?" Princess Zera, however, remained perfectly calm in the middle of the storm she had created. She stepped down from her throne and began walking toward Elena, ignoring the chaos around her. As she moved, beings scrambled to get out of her way, though whether from respect or fear, Elena couldn't tell. "Father," the princess said, her voice somehow carrying clearly through all the noise, "I have made my choice according to your rules. You said I must choose someone from this gathering, and I have done so. But she's not even from our galaxy," Emperor Vox thundered. "She's not even a proper suitor. She's some kind of observer." Elena finally found her voice, though it came out as barely more than a whisper. "Your Majesty, there's been a mistake. I'm just a scientist from Earth. I'm not here to marry anyone. I'm just supposed to observe and then go home." Princess Zera had reached Elena's section by now, and she looked directly into Elena's eyes. Up close, Elena could see that the princess's cosmic beauty was real. Not some kind of illusion or alien technology, but more than that. She could see something in those star-bright eyes that she recognized: loneliness. "There's no mistake," Princess Zera said softly, speaking directly to Elena. "May I sit with you?" Elena nodded, still too shocked to do anything else. The princess settled gracefully beside her, completely ignoring the continued outrage from the rejected suitors and the growing diplomatic crisis her choice had created. "I suppose you're wondering why I chose you," Princess Zera said, as if they were having a quiet conversation over coffee, instead of sitting in the middle of an intergalactic incident. "The thought had crossed my mind," Elena managed to say, surprised to find that her sense of humor was still working despite everything. Princess Zera smiled at that, and Elena realized it was the first genuine smile she had seen from the princess all day. "I have a gift," the princess explained. "I can see the true nature of beings, regardless of their species or appearance. For 30 years, I have looked into the hearts of suitors from across the galaxy, and do you know what I saw in every single one?" Elena shook her head. "Ambition, greed, political calculation, the desire for power or status or fame. Not one of them saw me as anything more than a prize to be won or a stepping stone to greater things." Princess Zera's voice carried centuries of disappointment. "But when I looked at you, what did you see?" Elena asked, genuinely curious. Despite her confusion, "I saw someone who had no interest in claiming me at all," the princess said with a laugh. "You were watching this ceremony with pure scientific fascination. You weren't calculating how to win my favor or planning what you would do with royal power. You were just interested in learning something new. Do you have any idea how rare that is?" Elena began to understand, but before she could respond, Emperor Vox appeared beside them, his presence making the air itself seem to vibrate with barely contained energy. "Zara, this has gone far enough," he said, his voice slightly calmer but still dangerous. "You are causing a diplomatic catastrophe. 3 different star systems have already threatened to withdraw from our alliance. The Cosmic Council is demanding an explanation. You must reconsider this choice." Princess Zara stood up to face her father, and Elena could see the royal steel beneath her gentle exterior. "Father, you gave me the right to choose. I have chosen. You cannot marry a being we know nothing about, from a planet that isn't even part of our galactic community. Then perhaps," Princess Zara said with quiet determination, "it's time our community expanded." The Emperor and his daughter stared at each other for a long moment, and Elena could feel the weight of cosmic history balancing on the edge of their conflict. Finally, Emperor Vox sighed, a sound like solar winds across empty space. "Very well," he said. "But we cannot formalize this union without understanding what we are dealing with." "Dr. Eleanor Rodriguez," he said, turning to Elena and somehow knowing her name, "you will remain here as my daughter's chosen companion for 1 full cosmic cycle. During this time, you will learn our ways, and we will learn yours. If, at the end of this period, you both still wish to proceed, I will consider recognizing this union. If not, you will return to your world with our gratitude, and this incident will become a footnote in diplomatic history." Elena's mind raced. A cosmic cycle was roughly equivalent to an Earth year. She would be away from her research, her life, her entire world for that long. But as she looked around at the incredible technology, the diverse beings, and the vast scope of cosmic civilization, she realized this was the opportunity of several lifetimes. "I accept," she said, standing up on shaky legs. Princess Zara took her hand, and Elena felt a warm energy pass between them. "Thank you," the princess whispered, "for giving me hope that someone might actually want to know who I really am." As the rejected suitors filed out of the hall, and the diplomatic crisis began to calm into merely a diplomatic incident, Elena realized that her quiet life as a radio astronomer was officially over. She had no idea what the next year would bring, but for the first time in her life, she was about to find out what it felt like to be chosen by someone who saw her exactly as she was. The first few months of Elena's year in the Cosmic Palace were nothing like what she had expected. She had thought she would spend her time studying alien technology and learning about different civilizations. Instead, she found herself becoming friends with the loneliest princess in the galaxy. Princess Zara turned out to be nothing like the perfect, untouchable royal figure Elena had seen during the ceremony. Away from the formal court settings, she was curious, funny, and surprisingly down-to-earth for someone who had been raised in a floating palace, surrounded by the energy of dying stars. "I've always wondered what it would be like to live on a planet with weather," Zara said one day as they walked through the palace's zero-gravity gardens. Plants from hundreds of worlds grew in floating spheres of water and light, creating a rainbow of colors that shifted and danced around them. "Weather can be pretty annoying sometimes," Elena laughed, thinking about all the times rain had ruined her telescope observations. "You wouldn't believe how many important experiments I've had to cancel because of clouds." "But you also get sunsets," Zara said wistfully, "and storms, and snow. Here, everything is always perfect. The same temperature, the same artificial lighting, the same controlled environment. Sometimes I dream about feeling wind on my face or rain in my hair." Elena realized that for all her cosmic power and royal privilege, Princess Zara had lived a very sheltered life. She had never experienced the simple pleasures that Elena took for granted, like walking barefoot on grass or watching clouds change shape in the sky. As the weeks passed, Elena began to see why the princess had been so unhappy with all her previous suitors. Zara was incredibly intelligent, with a mind that could grasp scientific concepts that would take Elena years to fully understand. But she had been expected to hide her intelligence. behind royal politeness, to smile and nod while less intelligent. Beings explained things to her that she already knew better than they did. The Duke of Neutron spent 3 hours explaining basic quantum mechanics to me. Zara told Elena one evening as they floated outside the palace, looking at the galaxy spread out around them. He had no idea that I had designed half the equipment he was describing. He just assumed that because I was beautiful and royal, I must be stupid. Elena felt a flash of anger on her friend's behalf. That's ridiculous. You're one of the smartest people I've ever met, and I work with PhD physicists for a living. That's what I mean, Zara said, turning to look at Elena with those cosmic eyes. You see me as a person with thoughts and feelings and intelligence. Everyone else sees me as either a prize to be won or a pretty decoration for their achievements there. Friendship deepened as Elena learned to navigate life in the palace. She discovered that many of the magic technologies the aliens used were actually based on scientific principles that humans hadn't discovered yet. Zara became her guide and teacher, explaining concepts that advanced Elena's understanding of physics by centuries. In return, Elena shared stories of life on Earth that fascinated the princess. She told her about ocean waves and mountain climbing, about the way cities looked at night and how different foods tasted. Most importantly, she shared her passion for discovery, for the joy of learning something new about the universe. On Earth, we have this phrase, Elena said one day as they worked together in Zara's private laboratory. We say that curiosity killed the cat, meaning that being too curious can get you in trouble. But we also say that satisfaction brought it back. I like that, Zara said, carefully adjusting a device that could measure the age of starlight. Here, curiosity is considered unbecoming for royalty. We're supposed to be satisfied with what we already know. That sounds boring, Elena said honestly. It is, Zara agreed. That's why I was so miserable. Until you came along and reminded me that learning new things is supposed to be fun. As the cosmic cycle neared its end, both women faced a choice that neither had expected when this arrangement began. Elena's research work with Zara had led to discoveries that could revolutionize both human and alien science. She had helped solve problems that had puzzled the galactic community for decades, while Zara had shown her wonders that no human had ever imagined. More importantly, somewhere along the way, their friendship had grown into something deeper. Elena found herself looking forward to their conversations more than anything else in her day. Zara's laugh had become her favorite sound in the universe, and the princess's happiness had become more important to her than her own scientific ambitions. I have to ask you something, Zara said as they sat together watching the energy rings dance around the palace. And I want you to be completely honest with me. Always, Eleanor promised. Are you staying because you want to, or because you feel like you have to? Because if you want to go home to Earth, I'll understand. I won't be angry or hurt. I just want you to be happy. Eleanor considered the question seriously. Earth was her home, the place where she had grown up and built her career. Her research there had been her life's passion for 15 years. But as she looked at Zara, with her silver hair catching the light from distant stars and her eyes full of hope and fear, Eleanor realized something that surprised her. I want to stay, she said, but I also want to keep my connection to Earth. My work there is important, and there are people I care about. Is there a way to do both? Zara's face lit up with excitement. Actually, there is. We've been working on quantum communication technology that could let you maintain real-time contact with Earth. You could continue your research on both worlds, sharing discoveries between our civilizations. Elena felt her heart leap with possibility. You mean I could help introduce humanity to the galactic community gradually, while still being here with you? If that's what you want, Zara said softly. That's exactly what I want, Elena said, taking the princess's hand. I want to be part of both worlds. I want to help them understand each other. When Elena and Zara appeared before Emperor Vox at the end of the cosmic cycle, they weren't just two beings who had decided to stay together. They were partners in the truest sense, ready to build a bridge between Earth and the stars. Father, Princess Zara said, I present to you Dr. Eleanor Rodriguez, cosmic scientist, Earth's first galactic ambassador, and the person who helped me remember who I really am." Emperor Vox looked at his daughter, seeing a happiness in her eyes that had been missing for decades. Then he looked at Elena, this human who had somehow accomplished what the finest suitors in 17 galaxies could not. "Welcome to the family," he said with a smile. "I think you're going to make the universe a much more interesting place." Years later, as Dr. Elena Rodriguez Zara published her research on interdimensional love and helped establish the first Earth Galaxy Cultural Exchange Program, she often thought about that night in the desert when she first saw lights in the sky. She had been looking for proof that humans weren't alone in the universe. She never imagined she would find love among the stars.